Well, people ask me from time to time, how do you decide what to talk about from week to week? And about half the time, it's something that I either need to hear or want to remind myself about. And today is no exception. So in preparation for today's Science of Mind lesson, I direct your attention to the big screens and let's affirm together, I am open and receptive as I receive this message today. Something I am about to hear applies to my life. I am here by divine appointment to receive spiritual tools for personal transformation and to help make the world a better place. My life's purpose is already within me, and I am committed to its unfoldment. As I hear truth today, I am set free, and so are you. Let's grow together. A Buddhist monk in New York City walks up to a hot dog vendor, and the vendor says, "Hey, buddy, what can I make you?" And the Buddhist replies, "Make me one with everything." Well, after a brief chuckle at the monk's little joke, the vendor hands him his hot dog with everything and says, "That'll be $6. And the monk hands over a $10 bill and waits as the vendor simply stands there and stares at him. And the monk finally says, "Well, what about my change?" "Ah," said the hot dog vendor, "change comes from within." Make me one with everything. Now, a real Buddhist would never say that, because a Buddhist already knows that they're one with everything. Instead, a Buddhist might say, "Make me at peace with everything." The idea of oneness is fundamental to our New Thought teaching. We often make variations on this affirmation. There is one mind, one creative intelligence operating throughout the universe and operating as me right now. We say that everything begins in the one mind, in that creative intelligence. I no more believe that the universe is the result of some cosmic accident than I believe that you could take thousands of alphabet blocks, jumble them all up, and somehow they would rearrange themselves into a philosophy textbook. So we know that there's one mind, and all things proceed out of it. One mind and an infinite variety of manifestations or expressions of that mind. But does that mean that there's one mind and many bodies? Well, the Apostle Paul addressed this 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "Just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has a special function, so in spirit we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully." So Paul's idea is that each of us is not just a part of the one mind, we are also part of one body. And viewed from that perspective, we can draw several conclusions. So let's start by taking a look at your individual body. Your body has a lot of parts, but they're not independent of each other. They rely on each other, and they're mutually supportive. And in many cases, parts of your body cannot survive without other parts. For example, we know that poor dental hygiene will cause your teeth and gums to deteriorate, but it can also cause heart disease. Likewise, an infection in any part of your body affects your entire body. You can't just get a fever in an infected foot. An infection anywhere in your body causes a fever throughout your body. So when you treat an infected foot, you are helping your entire body. I know people who died as the result of a seemingly trivial wound somewhere on their bodies. They had diabetes or some other condition which made their bodies unable to ward off infection. So when they didn't take care of themselves properly, they suffered the consequences. Holistic medicine shows us that you can't isolate any part of your body. Your body is an integrated system, and every part depends on many other parts. And this is also true of the universe in which we live. We are all part of the whole thing. Imagine for a moment trying to live independent of the universe. There's a TV reality show that takes away contestants' possessions and even their clothing, and then turns them loose into the wilderness to see if they can survive. Well, they do survive, but they do so by using other parts of the localized universe to protect or fuel their own parts of the universe. So after a couple of days of trying to hobble around on bloodied and bruised feet, they may make sandals out of bark or leaves. That makes them dependent on plants. They may stay warm by fashioning crude garments out of hide or fur. And that makes them dependent on animals. They have to eat, which makes them dependent on plants or animals. And does this interdependence mean that you shouldn't be an individual? Certainly not, any more than your nose should stop trying to be a nose. Your nose is your body, and your body is your nose, and your nose is a necessary part of you, or it wouldn't be there. Your feet exist for an entirely different, but equally important reason. Your feet allow you to stand and walk and run. There's an old joke, how come your feet smell and your nose runs? Well, our feet and our noses can't exist by themselves. And likewise, it's impossible for any of us to exist on our own. Carl Sagan addressed this idea when he said, if you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first create the universe. And as much as we like to think about self-reliance, we must realize that we're parts of the great whole, functioning within an immensity that we can barely begin to grasp. This is not to say that we're not important or that we shouldn't be here. And besides, there is no big or small to the God who creates all. Now, when we consider our physical bodies, we observe that the size of any part of us frequently has no bearing on its importance. So the liver is the largest gland in your body, as well as being the largest internal organ. And the liver not only makes and secretes vital substances, but science has identified over 500 functions that the liver does, including immune protection, waste removal, and metabolism and energy storage. By contrast, the pineal gland is the smallest gland in the human body, but we couldn't live without it for more than a few days because we would never be able to sleep. And the pineal also regulates the pituitary gland, which secretes sex hormones, without which we wouldn't be here. So from the smallest to the largest, every part of our bodies is necessary to the whole, interacts with the whole, and supports the whole. There is such a thing as independent initiative and pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. And indeed, without our own personal initiative, we don't accomplish much in life. But we are each parts of one body and one mind, and we draw upon the vast whole in order to move upward in life. And we also contribute to the whole. The Roman philosopher Seneca said, "We are members of one great body, planted by nature in mutual love and fitted for a social life. We must consider that we were born for the good of the whole." And in fact, to the degree that we attempt to live apart from the whole, we're really living apart from ourselves, because we have no existence apart from the vast creative intelligence which is God. And the more we recognize that fact, the more we consciously live as an important part of the whole, the more we live happy, loving, productive lives, far from making us smaller. Consciously connecting to the whole empowers us beyond any other practice. Another ancient Roman philosopher, Plotinus, said, "Each being contains in itself the whole intelligible world. The all is everywhere. Each is the all, and all is each." So if we're wise, we don't abuse our bodies. Only a very disturbed person would deliberately stab himself with a knife, set himself on fire, or knowingly ingest poison. The consequences are too dire. For the most part, we know better. And yet, since we are all one, when we mistreat others, we're really mistreating ourselves. Every person in the world is a part of us. The Native American chief, Seattle, said, "Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect." Consider for a moment the law of karma, which is that what we do to others rebounds to us. How could that possibly be unless we are all part of the same body? The harm that we do to others is just as harmful as if we did it to ourselves, because we did do it to ourselves. In the grand scheme of things, I am you, and you are me. The civil rights leader Bayard Rustin said, "We are all one, and if we don't know it, we will learn it the hard way." So, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, has just as much to do with being good to yourself as it does being good to others. I read once that every time you take a breath, you're breathing in a molecule of air that was once in Solomon's lungs, or Michelangelo's lungs, or Gandhi's lungs. Turns out it really is a small world after all. Larry Dossey describes this way. Part of the material we incorporate into our body has already been part of the bodies of others, and part of the substance we shed will enter others' bodies. Body, therefore, is not a thing, but a collective process. I share my body with you, and you share your body with me. We have yet to come to terms with the moral and ethical implications of this fact. If we did so, we might refine the golden rule as follows: do good unto others, because they are you. If we live our lives hurting ourselves, we're not just creating a miserable life for ourselves, but we're contributing to others' misery as well. We're here on this earth at this time to fulfill an important role, and that means that the world is depending upon us to do our part. To the degree that we do our part, we're contributing to the all. To the degree that we don't, we have let the world down. We talked about volunteering a little bit ago, and service is an interesting concept. Many people think of it as a sacrifice, but there is no good that you can do for someone else that doesn't also do you good. That good may show up in expected ways, but it's even nicer when it shows up in unexpected ways. And just from a purely business standpoint, it is a truism that the surest way to riches is to figure out what people need and then serve them by supplying that need. Even if the payoff isn't immediate, it is there, and it will appear to you in due time. You might think of this as a karmic bank account into which you make regular deposits. And these deposits will draw interest, and your good, therefore, will come back to you multiplied. There have been many scientific studies that prove the benefits of lending a helping hand, giving to charities, and volunteering for service to the community. And here are just a very few of the results of those studies. First, helping others just plain feels good. When you help others, it promotes physiological changes in the parts of the brain linked with happiness. And this heightened sense of well-being is the byproduct of not only being more physically active as a result of volunteering, but also because it makes you more socially active. So secondly, volunteering or helping others creates a sense of belonging. Helping others helps you make new friends and connect with your community. And face-to-face activities like volunteering at a food bank also help reduce loneliness and isolation. Third, it gives you a sense of purpose. Volunteering enhances your overall sense of purpose and identity. And this is because helping others can make you feel rewarded and fulfilled and empowered. And fourth, giving of yourself helps keep things in perspective. Helping others, especially helping those who are less fortunate than you, helps you put things into perspective and makes you feel more positive about your own circumstances. Fifth, volunteerism, helping others, it's contagious. One study found that people are much more likely to perform acts of generosity after observing another doing the same. And this effect can ripple throughout the entire community, inspiring dozens of individuals to make a difference. Sixth, helping others can help you live longer. Regular volunteering improves your ability to manage stress and stave off disease, as well as increasing your whole sense of life satisfaction. And here are just a couple of ways that can work. Helping others lowers blood pressure. A huge study showed that older individuals who volunteered at least 200 hours per year, that's about 4 hours a week, decreased their risk of hypertension or high blood pressure by a whopping 40%. And this could possibly be because they were provided with more social opportunities, which relieves loneliness and the stress that often accompanies it. And it's been shown that helping others may help with chronic pain. According to one study, people who suffered from chronic pain tried working as volunteers for others who were also suffering chronic pain. And as a result, the volunteers experienced a reduction in their own symptoms. Seventh, volunteerism or helping others will give you a sense of renewal. Helping others can teach you to help yourself. If you've been through a tough experience, grief moments, or just a case of the blues, the activism cure is a great way to get back to feeling like yourself. Eighth, you'll boost your self-esteem. People who volunteer have been found to have higher self-esteem and overall well-being. The benefits of volunteering also depend upon your consistency. So the more regularly you volunteer, the more confidence you'll gain. Ninth, you'll create stronger friendships. When you help others, you give off positive vibes, which can rub off on peers and improve your friendships. Being a force for good in a friend's life can help build a lasting bond. And 10th, you become a glass half full type of person. Having a positive impact on someone else can help you change your own outlook and attitude. And experts say that performing acts of kindness boosts your mood and ultimately makes you more optimistic and positive. Bottom line, when you're helping others, you're really helping yourself, as well as helping everyone. Jesus famously told his followers, "I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me water. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you visited me." And the disciples were confused and they said, "Well, when did we do these things?" Came the reply, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Which is an eloquent way of saying, we're all in this together. As usual with the teachings of Jesus, there were various levels of meaning here. And beyond the fact that we are all in this together is the fact that the disciples probably would have done any of these things for Jesus. After all, he was their teacher and their leader, and they loved him. But would they have fed strangers? Would they have been disgusted by the naked? Would they have had contempt for the prisoner? Jesus also told the story of the Good Samaritan. A Jewish man was traveling alone when he was beaten, robbed, and left to die by the roadside. And along came a couple of devout Jews, one of whom was a priest. But they both stepped around the man's battered body and continued on their way. Finally, a Samaritan stopped and rescued the man, tending to his wounds and leaving him in the care of an innkeeper, care he paid for in advance. Now, the Jews despised the Samaritans because the Samaritans were of mixed racial heritage, part Jewish, part other ethnicities. They were half-breeds. And likewise, the Samaritans hated the Jews because they were self-righteous. And yet, it was the Samaritan who acted as if he were the nearly dead Jew's brother. And the so-called good Jews couldn't be bothered to help. The moral of the story resonates to this very day. It's very easy to be kind to those we like. But what about everyone else? We live in an era of cancel culture, people viciously attacking other people for their political views, and entire categories of people and occupations smeared by nasty generalizations. Social media make it possible to vilify people without consequence. We're so sure that those people need to get right, and they're so sure that we need to get right. How can we ever feel and celebrate our oneness with those people? Well, Ernest Holmes, writing in his book, This Thing Called You, urged us to, quote, see God in everyone, the same God with a different face, the same animating principle with a different form, the same divine presence clothed in individual expression, unquote. In other words, we see our oneness when we look for it. A little story. Louisiana resident Albert Guillory lives on property that his great-grandparents bought from their former masters after the Civil War. Generations of the Guillorys, descendants of slaves, have lived on that property, right next door to the big house where the descendants of the former slaveholders live. And Albert Guillory remembers his grandmother and great-uncle having, in the 1940s, warm, cordial relations with the family whose ancestors had been their slave masters. It seems that Any sense of anger the Guillories may have harbored around the horrors of slavery and segregation has burned off. Elbert Guillory runs a law firm, and unbelievably, his family is still serving the descendants of the old masters. Guillory says, "We do their legal work now. We don't do their horses." There aren't too many things we could think of that are worse than slavery. So anger around that is understandable, if not productive. The bonds of hate are stronger than the bonds of slavery or imprisonment, and yet, enough love can always wipe the slate clean. A consciousness of oneness is liberating, and a desire to serve can be very profitable indeed. Just ask Edmund Guillory. One mind, one body. Ernest Holmes used to illustrate the nature of personal reality by comparing us to drops of water and comparing God to the ocean. And the idea is that drops of water may seem insignificant compared to the ocean, but a drop of water is made of the exact same stuff that the ocean is made of. So the ocean is the drop, and the drop is the ocean. And furthermore, without the drops, there would be no ocean. Here's an interesting thought exercise. I'm going to read a quote, and you have to guess which great spiritual leader or guru said it. A human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Nobody is able to achieve this completely, but the striving for each achievement is in itself part of the liberation and foundation for inner security. Who wrote that? Well, if you said Deepak Chopra, you'd be wrong. Could have been Eckhart Tolle, but it wasn't. It was said by perhaps the greatest scientific mind of the modern era, Albert Einstein. Yes, even science has come around to what the ancient spiritual masters knew. It's all one. Ernest Holmes foresaw this kind of thinking when he said that someday spirituality and science would walk hand in hand into the future. And that day is here. Science and spirituality agree. We are all made of the same stuff. We are all parts of one giant, magnificent organism, forever evolving into higher states of being. And the good news is we don't have to do anything to make us the one. In the words of another great scientist, Werner Erhard, what I recognized is that you can't put it together. It's already together. And what you have to do is experience it being together. It's already together. It's always been together. It will always be together. What I am, you are. What you are, I am. Oneness. The one and only. We didn't create it. but we do need to wake up to it. And that is what we're trying to do in this Center for Spiritual Living. God, me, you. As a poem by an unknown writer says, I sought my soul, but my soul I could not see. I sought my God, but my God eluded me. I sought my neighbor, and I found all three. Namaste.